my dear students in 4th primary, how are you? When we learned multiplication in the first term, we were introduced to many multiplication properties. زي إيه؟ زي ال commutative property وكمان ال identity property and the zero property of multiplication or multiplying by zero. طيب, do you think we can apply تفتكروا نقدر نطبق the same properties when multiplying the fractions؟ ده اللي هنعرفه النهارده في الدرس بتاعنا fractions and the identity property. هنتعلم النهارده how to apply the identity property of multiplication and how it will help us to make equivalent fractions. And now let's start in access part with identity property review activity on page 45. Let's see it all together. Okay, and now in the access part, now I'll give you some time to answer problems from 1 to 4 and circle the ones that model the identity property of multiplication. And I want you to record your ideas on what you know about تكتبوا إيه اللي أنتوا تعرفوه about the identity property of multiplication. And then we'll review the answers all together when we are back. And now after you have finished, let's review. تعالوا نشوف بقى what we have learned about the identity property and the zero property of multiplication. Now when I asked, لما سألت الستودنتس بتوعي في الكلاسروم, they said that they knew, قالوا لي إن إحنا نعرف يا ميس that the identity property is 1. It is right. That means any number multiplied by 1 always equal to the same number. طيب, now if I multiply number by 0, لو عملت any number times 0, the answer will be 0. عايزاكم تفتكروا these two properties very well عشان ده هيساعدكم when reviewing the answers to the problems together. And now in problem number 1, here's problem number 1. He's asking me 45 times 1 equals what? What will the product be? Yes, exactly. You multiply by the identity property, which is 1. مش احنا اتفقنا ال identity property is 1. So 45 times 1 gives me what? Of course, the answer is 45. Okay, now let's move to problem number 2. Here's problem number 2. He's asking me 1 times 34,953 equals what? All right, what about problem number 3? Before going to number 3, let's solve problem 2 first. Again, he's asking me 1 times 34,953 equals what? Any number times 1 gives me the same number, right? So the answer is 34,953. And now let's move to the problem number 3. He's asking me 2 over 3 times 1 equals what? طيب, will the answer will be 2 over 3 as well? All right. As for problem number 4, he's asking me to multiply 0 times 4. مش احنا لسه قايلين ان any number times 0 gives me 0. So 0 times 4 equals of course 0. Okay. طيب, من اللي احنا عملناه الانسرز البروبلمز اللي عملنا الانسرز بتاعتها 1 2 3 and 4. Who can tell me which one I will circle? Yes, of course, I will circle number 1 and circle number 2 and also circle number 3, right? Okay, now before answering the rest of the problems, I want you to think about this. If I want to write 1 in the form of fractions, هعمل ايه؟ أنا متأكدة إن أنتوا فاكرين from the last lessons that we write a fraction. 1 الفراكشن بتاعها إيه؟ لازم النومينيتور يبقى زي بالظبط الدينومينيتور. Like what? Like 2 over 2 for example أو 5 over 5 أو 4 over 4. كل الفراكشنز دي represent one whole. And this is the method, هي دي الطريقة اللي احنا نركز عليها النهاردة when answering problem number 6. This one. طيب, problem number 6 هو بيقول لي إيه؟ بيقول لي multiply 1 over 1 times 1 over 8. Because the numerator and denominator is equal to 1 over 1, they are the same. ده معناه إيه؟ ده معناه إن الفراكشن equals to 1 whole. يعني 1 over 1 equals to 1 whole. So أكني بعمل بالظبط 1 over 8 times 1. The answer will be the same fraction which is 1 over 8. In the same way in problem number 7 بنفس الطريقة بالظبط. We want to find the product of multiplying 3 over 7 times 4 over 4. مش احنا اتفقنا ان ال1 هو نفس النومينيتور زي الدينومينيتور؟ That means ان 4 over 4 equals to whole 1. So 3 over 7 times 4 over 4 gives me the same fraction, which is 3 over 7. Of course, you will circle what? Yes, I will circle problem number 6 and problem number 7. Why? Because they are multiplied by whole 1 and they all represent the identity property of multiplication. And now, after reviewing and revising the identity property of multiplication, which is 1, دلوقتي تعالوا نروح بقى للactivity from parts to a whole in build page 46. Let's see it all together. Okay, in this activity we will use the fraction wall. هنستخدم بقى هنا fraction wall in front of us to help us answering the questions. In the first question, here is the first question. He's asking me to find the number of halves in one whole. يعني بيسألني ال1 whole ده فيه كام half. وكمان لو عايزة أكتب 1 whole as a fraction using half هكتبه إزاي؟ طيب تعالوا نشوف كده. When using the fraction wall هلاقي إن ال1 whole فيه كام half. Yes, it is made up of 2 halves like you see here, right? So 1 whole equals 2 halves. Okay. طيب now لو أنا عايزة أكتب 1 as a fraction using the half هكتب 1 equals what? Of course 1 equals 2 over 2, right? Okay. Now we can divide the 1 whole into 2 halves as you see from the fraction wall. Now let's move to problem number 2. Problem number 2 بقى بيسألني إيه؟ بيقول لي question is we want to know how many fourths in one whole. يعني بيسأل ال1 whole ده فيه كام fourth. Yes, from the fraction wall I see that ال1 whole فيه 4 fourths. Look, right? 4 parts أو 4 fourths. So I will write in 1 whole equals to 4 fourths. طيب وبيسألني كمان لو أنا عايزة أكتب ال1 whole as a fraction using the fourth. I will write it. How can I write it? يبقى 1 equals 4 over 4. يعني 4 out of 4, right? Now I will give you some time to answer the third and the fourth questions using the fraction wall in front of you. Then we'll review the answers all together when we are back. And now after you have finished answering these questions, we are asked in the third question to find how many tenths are there in one whole. بيسألني ال1 whole في كام tenths. Can you count? تعالوا كده go to the tenths and let's count the parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. يبقى أنا عرفت إن ال1 whole في 10 tenths, right? Okay. طيب لو عايزة أكتب fraction لل1 whole using the tenth, how can I write it? Yes, I can write in 1 whole equals to 10 over 10, right? The fourth question is very important one. تعالوا كده نشوف fourth question. Here's the fourth question. This is very important because it is asking me to explain أشرح pattern we followed when answering. I asked this question. سألت question ده بالذات للstudents بتوعي in my classroom. في منهم قالوا that they count the parts on the fraction wall. بيقعدوا كده يعدوا البارتس الموجودة في fraction wall. وفي students تانيين قالوا لي that they know in one whole the denominator and numerator are equal to each other. So once they knew the denominator, خلاص لو عرفنا denominator يبقى احنا كده عرفنا the number of fractions making up the one whole. And these are the patterns they noticed. هي دي الباترنز اللي هم لاحظوها. وده هيساعدنا كويس قوي to solve the fifth question that asked us to tell the number of 25ths in one whole. بيسألني ال1 whole فيه كام 25ths. اوكي طيب من كل اللي احنا اتعلمناه في الفراكشنز we could say that it is possible to divide ال1 whole in 2 parts that have equal numerator and denominator. So ال1 whole has 25 parts out of what? Out of 25. يبقى أنا ممكن أكتب كده إن ال1 whole equals 25 parts out of 25 أو 25 over 25. And now we have used the identity property which is 1 in the multiplication of fractions. وكمان عرفنا how to write the one whole in more than one form of fraction. تعالوا بقى دلوقتي we'll move over the activity creating equivalent fractions in build page 47. And here's the creating equivalent fractions. Now we will learn from it how we can apply. هنتعلم ازاي نطبق ال identity property in fractions to make equivalent fractions. عايزاكم تاخدوا بالكم كويس قوي من حاجة مهمة قوي. That when we multiply fractions لما نعمل multiplication للفراكشنز بلاقي ان النومينيتور والدينومينيتور كمان they change بيتغيروا. ليه؟ Because I multiply the numerator by the denominator وكمان بعمل multiply ال denominator by the denominator. طب ده عكس تماما اللي بنعمله في الاديشن والسبتراكشن. فاكرين الاديشن والسبتراكشن كنت بسيب الدينومينيتور as it is، الدينومينيتور بيبقى the same and I keep the denominator as it is، واللي بيتغير بس هو النومينيتور، بعمل بلس او ماينس للنومينيتور only. Through this activity هنركز كويس قوي on the multiplication of fractions by using models، واحنا بنستخدم المودلز. As you can see here, the model in front of us, it represents the fraction half. Here's the fraction half, and this model represents the half. Okay, then we multiply this fraction. أنا عايزة أعمل multiplication للفراكشن دي by one whole. بس أنا عايزة أكتب ال one whole in the form of fraction. يعني هعمل half times 1 بس ال 1 دي عايزاها in the form of fraction. طيب دلوقتي يعني هعمل half times what؟ 1 whole in the form of fraction. طب أنا ممكن أعملها 2 over 2. ليه اشمعنى عملت 2 over 2؟ Because the model is divided into 2 parts. That's why قلت ال 1 whole هيبقى 2 over 2. Now we want to find the product أو the answer. What will it be? To find the numerator هعمل 1 times 2. هعمل النومينيتور times each other. هي 1 times 2 equals what? Equals 2. طيب to find the denominator هعمل 2 times 2 which is equal to 4. So the answer أو the fraction equals 2 over 4. طيب في حد بقى ممكن يفكر ويقول لي ميس دلوقتي احنا لما كنا بنعمل any fraction times 1 whole حضرتك قلتي لازم الانسر مش بيتغير خالص، يعني half times 1 لازم equal to half، بس هنا الانسر is 2 over 4 it is not half. طيب تعالوا كده نفكر في الانسر اللي احنا عملناه. هو مش الهاف equals to 2 over 4؟ مش الهاف this one equals to 2 over 4؟ This also 2 over 4 also represent half of the shape, right? وكمان لو فكرنا هنلاقي إن 2 is half the 4. That's why half is equivalent or equal to 2 over 4, right? Okay. تعالوا بقى use the same fraction اللي هو الهاف but this time I will multiply it by 1 whole برضو بس هغير الفراكشن بتاعتي. Okay. طيب this time I will make half times 1 whole but I will write it in the form of 3 over 3. طيب as we have agreed كلنا متفقين in we will multiply the numerator by the denominator and the denominator by the denominator. يعني هعمل 1 times 3 equals 3 وهعمل 2 times 3 equals to 6. يبقى النيو فراكشن بتاعي 3 over 6. I am sure you are noticing متأكدة إن أنتوا كلكم ملاحظين إن numerator 3 is half the 6, right؟ ده معناه إيه؟ ده معناه إن 3 over 6 is equivalent to half. وده الموديل اللي مرسوم عندنا 3 over 6 represent also half of the shape. So 3 of which, yes, 3 shaded parts of 6 and 6 represent all the parts. So this fraction represents the half أو half of the shape. We conclude بقى from all this A. We conclude from this activity that multiplying fractions by one whole أو fractions represent one whole زي 3 over 3 أو 6 over 6 ده بيساعدنا كويس قوي to create equivalent fractions. And now let's practice and learn more about creating equivalent fractions through the activity equivalent to 1. تعالوا نعمل activity دي على البورد all together. Okay. And now here I have 9 cards. Okay. هاخد بينهم 1 card وهستخدم النمبر on the card to form a fraction or to create a fraction equivalent to 1 whole. يعني مثلا لو طلع لي card 6 يبقى هعمل fraction بتاعي 6 over 6 which represent 1 whole. وبعدين هعمل multiply the fraction اللي أنا كتبته by the fractions written here on the board. And then we will write the answer to get the equivalent benchmark fraction. الانسر ده هحط علامة على number line to its equivalent benchmark fraction. And now I'll start with you with the example in problem number 1 عشان to make it very easy for you to solve the rest of the problems. Now I will take one card from here. I can choose this card for example. Okay, so I'll put the rest here. And here, as you see, it is 5. Okay, the card here, number 5, is written in the card. So I will write the fraction equals to 1 using the 5 with equal numerator and denominator. يعني الفراكشن بتاعي it will be 5 over 5. And then I'll multiply 5 over 5 by these two fractions. تعالوا كده نبتدي مع بعض. So, yes, I start with 5 over 5. يبقى أول حاجة هعملها إيه؟ half times 5 over 5, right? So I will write here 5 over 5. And then let's multiply these two fractions together. So what should I do? Yes, I will multiply the numerator first and then the denominator. So 1 times 5 gives me 5 and 2 times 5 gives me 10. So the first fraction is 5 over 10, right? Okay. Now we want to represent this fraction on the number line drawn in front of us. اتفقنا ان الفراكشن ده هعلم على equivalent benchmark fraction بتاعه on the number line. طيب مش كلنا عارفين ان denominator is half the denominator, 5 is half the 10. So which benchmark fraction of this fraction? Yes, it is equivalent to the benchmark fraction which is half. يبقى هاجي عند half هنا and I will write equivalent fraction of it which is 5 over 10. Right? تعالوا بقى نعمل same steps with the second one. يعني هعمل 2 over 2 times 5 over 5. So I multiply 2 over 2 times 5 over 5. 2 times 5 gives me 10 and 2 times 5 gives me 10. يبقى دلوقتي الفراكشن بتاعي 10 over 10. هو مش 10 over 10 equivalent to 1 whole. So I will go to the 1 whole and write here the second fraction which is 10 over 10. Right? Okay. And now it's your turn. I will give you some time to try this activity and I will be the one who's choosing the second card for you. And you will create the fraction equivalent to the and multiply it by 1 over 3 with 2 over 3 and 3 over 3. طيب, and then you will write the answers next to the equivalent fractions on the number line زي ما احنا عملنا في الفirst one. Now I'll give you some time to solve this and then we'll review the answer all together when we get back. And now the card that has the number back is, let's choose another card and I will choose this one. So it is 7, number 7. Okay. And now after answering the activity, let's check your answers together. Since the number we choose the card is 7, يبقى الفراكشن بتاعي لازم يبقى ايه؟ Yes, 1 whole يعني 7 over 7. So I will multiply 7 over 7 by the first fraction اللي هي 1 over 3. يبقى أول حاجة هعملها 1 over 3 times 7 over 7. زي ما اتفقنا I will multiply the numerator then I will multiply the denominator. So 1 times 7 equals what? Of course 1 times 7 equals 7. 3 times 7 equals what? 3 times 7 equals to 21. يبقى الفراكشن عندي هنا 7 over 21. طيب دلوقتي I want to represent this on the number line. هحطه فين؟ Yes, 7 over 21 هي نفسها equivalent to 1 over 3, right? So I will go here to 1 over 3 وهكتب equivalent fraction بتاعتها اللي هي 7 over 21. تعالوا بقى the same steps, but now I'll multiply the second fraction 2 over 3 by 7 over 7, right? Okay, and now 2 times 7 equals what? 2 times 7 equals to 14. 3 times 7 equals what? 3 times 7 equals 21. يبقى دلوقتي الفراكشن بتاعي 14 over 21, which is equivalent to which fraction? Of course, 14 over 21 equivalent to 2 over 3. So I will go here and 2 over 3, and I will write the equivalent fraction, which is 14 over 21. تعالوا نشوف بقى third fraction. Here I have 3 over 3. I will multiply it by 7 over 7. The same way I'll multiply the numerator, then I will multiply the denominator. يبقى 7 times 3 or 3 times 7 equals to 21. Another 3 times 7 equals to 21. طيب مين شاطر يقول لي 21 over 21? Of course it represents 1 أو it is equivalent to 1. So I will go to 1 here and write the equivalent fraction, which is 21 over 21. Okay, and in the same way, بنفس الطريقة بالظبط, you can complete this activity with your friends and review your answers with the teacher of your class. And now we have reached the connect part on page 48. تعالوا كده نشوفها مع بعض. Okay, and here we have a riddle, and we want to help our friend to find a fraction equivalent to 6 over 18 and 10 over 30. ولازم يكون النومينيتور والدينومينيتور يبقوا less than 5. This kind of information اسمها riddle clues. I know this riddle ممكن تبقى challenge to some of you, because throughout our lesson, when we multiply the fractions by the one whole to find the equivalent fraction, كنا بنعمل ايه؟ To multiply the numbers, بنعمل multiply للنومينيتور ومultiply للدينومينيتور، عشان كده النيو fraction كان بيطلع bigger than التو fractions اللي عندنا. But الريدل دي مطلوب مننا ان احنا نطلع smaller fraction. طيب in order to make smaller fraction أو simpler fraction لازم أعمل إيه؟ هستخدم the reverse of the multiplication operation. عكس multiplication operation اللي هي إيه؟ Yes, I will use the division. وهنتعلم أكتر about the division. So now I will leave you. هسيبكوا بقى to answer this on your own way. And in the next lesson, we will be able to check your answers all together. And now you can head to the practice part to check your understanding by scanning the code found at the start of the lesson on page 45, or the one shown on the screen here. This will direct you to the digital copy of your math textbook on the Egyptian Knowledge Bank. In the first problem here, as you see, here's the first problem. We are asked مطلوب مننا to multiply 2 over 3 times 4 over 4, as you see here. Okay. Now, here's the first problem. طيب, of course, as we said before, زي ما قلنا قبل كده, we will multiply the numerator by the numerator and denominator by the denominator. يبقى هعمل 2 times 4 equals what? Equals 8. And then 3 times 4 equals what? Equals 12. يبقى الفراكشن بتاعتي 8 over 12. طب أنا متأكدة إن أنتوا كلكم فهمتوا from the lesson that 8 over 12 is equivalent fraction to 2 over 3. ليه equivalent fraction ل 2 over 3? Because we multiply it by whole 1. ال 4 over 4 دي معناها whole 1. تعالوا نشوف كده problem number 2. Problem number 2 we have 3 over 4 times 5 over 5. The same thing. برضو هعمل numerator times numerator و denominator times denominator. يبقى هعمل 3 times 5 15 and 4 times 5 equals to 20. يبقى عندي 15 over 20 which is equivalent fraction to 15 over 20 equivalent fraction to 3 over 4. Right? طيب ليه 15 over 20 equivalent fraction to 3 over 4? Because I multiply 3 over 4 to a whole 1 اللي هي 5 over 5. Right? Okay, now let's move to problem number 3. Problem number 3, he wants me to multiply 7 over 9 times 8 over 8. هنطبق نفس الستبس اللي احنا بنعملها. 7 times 8 and 9 times 8. The answer will be what? 56 عشان 7 times 8 56 و 9 times 8 equals 72. Right? طيب وممكن كمان لو قلت 7 times 9 7 over 9 times 8 over 8 حد يقول لي الانسر equals 7 over 9 and it is right. Why? Because I multiply 7 over 9 times the whole one which is 8 over 8. Now let's move to problem number 4. Here in problem number 4 مطلوب مننا he asked me if 4 over 5 equivalent ل 12 over 15. يعني أنا عندي هنا 4 over 5 وعندي 12 over 15. هو عايز يعرف these two fractions are equivalent to each other. طيب we need to think to the first fraction. هنبص أول حاجة للفيرست fraction اللي هو 4 over 5 وهنفكر كده في النومينيتور اللي هو 4. What do you think it is the number؟ يعني أنا هعمل 4 times what عشان يبقى 12. مش دلوقتي ال 4 عايزاها تبقى 12. هعمل 4 times what to gives me 12. Of course كلنا عارفين إن 4 times 3 equals 12. Right؟ طيب تعالوا نشوف ال 5 كده اللي في الدينومينيتور دي. Once I multiply the numerator by 3 يبقى لازم اللي بعمله في النومينيتور هو نفسه اللي هعمله في الدينومينيتور. يبقى لازم أعمل 5 times 3. طب تعالوا نشوف كده لو أنا عملت 5 times 3 I will get 15. Yes 5 times 3 equals 15. ده معناه إن 4 over 5 is equivalent fraction to 12 over 15. Why? عشان لما أعمل 4 over 5 times 3 over 3 which represent the whole one gives me 12 over 15. So they are equivalent fractions. And this is the objective. هو ده هدف اللسن بتاعنا today to apply نطبق multiplication of fractions by one whole or the identity property of multiplication to find equivalent fractions to the original fractions. And now after we have finished our lesson, I hope you have enjoyed today's lesson so much with me. Thank you so much for your watching and see you next lesson.